Alright, guys, I'd like to officially welcome you to the Year 10 Set Plan Parent Information evening. Before we begin though, I'd like to acknowledge the Toohey people, the traditional owners of the land where we walk, learn and work, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I recognise their custodianship and role in caring for and maintaining country over thousands of years. May their strength and wisdom be with us today. Now, this evening I've got some heavy hitters with us tonight, and we are really hopeful that we have plenty of time at the end for a really detailed Q&A. Initially though, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Carolyn, the new head of Year 10. I'm going to briefly talk to you about my role here at the Gap State High School, and that's going to be followed by Sally Hawes, our acting principal here this evening. Carolyn Speers, our Year 10 DP, she'll follow Sally, and she's going to talk to you guys in great detail about the set plan process itself. That ties in nicely as well with Cameron Drew, who's our senior schooling DP, and he's going to run you through the QCE and ATAR process, which also ties in nicely with Natasha Ackland, who's also here this evening, our acting head of senior schooling. And she's going to discuss and break down that vet pathways, the subject selection stuff, and the set plan interviews themselves. We're also lucky enough to have Sarah Toohey here, our guidance officer. She's going to be really deconstructing and breaking down the wellbeing side of things for this process. And Emma Cullen, our head of department for inclusion, she's really going to talk and discuss her support process for you guys as parents and also for students. So a little bit about my role here at the Gap State High School. So as head of year, I'm really about the engagement management of every Year 10 student in the cohort. So I'm really about that wraparound wellbeing support. And to do that, it's more about, or for me, it's about the attendance tracking, it's the daily operational side of the effort and behaviour. And I'm really looking forward to engaging with the students in the school pride stuff. And what I mean by that is creating and forming respectful relationships in the hope that it creates that sense of belonging for each and every Year 10 student throughout this process, and also leading into that senior secondary phase. Evidence suggests that if we get the forming of relationships stuff right, the creation of the sense of belonging comes within our school community, and we can have that increase in motivation, which is what we're all after. I'm also heavily involved in the day-to-day investigations, I guess you'd call it, in terms of uniform wearing uniforms correctly, and finally being that support person for student and for teacher in regards to assessment. Finally, two other sort of main parts of my role here as head of Year 10 is to really organise the year level specific events. So I'll talk a little bit about camp in a moment, but I'll be involved in that process. And also facilitating the year level content in our Monday pastoral care lessons, which we obviously call Connect. I'd like to very briefly highlight some key contacts for you. So I've placed my name at the top of that chart because I view myself as the middleman for you as the parents and the guardian to the school. So any question or concern or query that you may have, please direct it my way, and if I can't answer the question or your concern, I'll always pass it to somebody who is able to answer that for you. No question is a silly question in my eyes. I've also placed Carolyn Speers' details up there, the Deputy Principal of Year 10. She's also happy to help you with any support throughout this process, and Natasha Ackland, our acting head of senior schooling, and Carla, our guidance officer for Year 10. Now, before I hand you over to our heavy hitters for this evening, I wanted to just flag the Year 10 camp with everybody. So the Year 10 camp, we wanted to inform you nice and early about this. So it's happening in week 2 of term 4, or the Monday the 10th to Thursday the 13th of October. It's happening at Emu Gully. Now, the videos that I've seen of Emu Gully looks fantastic. Very excited to be a part of that. Now the cost is approximately $450 $50. And for students, it's a really good opportunity, I believe, not only to create that team building, that sense of belonging, but also to discover maybe some mateship and some leadership skills that maybe our students might not be aware that they had. Before I hand over to Sally, if students aren't going to be attending camp, there is an alternative option. They are expected to be engaging in some work experience stuff during that week. So if you choose not to go on camp, even though we are really excited to sell to you, you're more than, your child is more than happy to be involved in some work experience. More information to come on that. Okay, I'd like to pass it over to Sally for the principal's address.
This tall, so I'll just sort this out a little bit. Can you hear me up the back? Great, thank you. Welcome. I don't know how I feel about being called a heavy hitter, but I'm going to take that as somewhat of a positive. You won't recognise me. I'm not a familiar face to you. I've been here for a grand total of 8 days, and I'm here for another 7. So my role this evening is really just to welcome you here. My substantive position is over at Kenmore State High School, and I'm just here to fill in for Anne while she's on long service leave. What I can tell you as a Gap local resident, I live just up the road, it's been a real pleasure for me to come and see the high school of my local community. And I can tell you that I think you've made a great choice, that this is a fantastic school. The lovely people over here to my right are really will undersell themselves to you, no doubt, because I've heard over the last 8 days some leaders around the Gap underselling what they do. This team that is made up of the names that you've seen really wrap around students and really wrap around the support for them in this transition phase. And it is an important one. I spoke to a couple of groups of Year 10s today, finding out what it is they love about their school, finding out what it is that they would like to see improve. And I can tell you that they have some opinions and important things that I value, both as an educator and as a parent, came through. So your students talked to me about having great teachers, having great facilities, which I can tell you definitely do, and that the food at the tuck shop is very good, most importantly. They wanted me to know that. The only thing I can offer you as someone who's been here for 5 minutes is my experience with working with students in this transition phase. And I have a little person at home who is 5, so I'm not having career pathway discussions at the moment, thank goodness. But what I have recognised in working with young people is they are starting at this time, some of them, to firm up what they want to do and where they want to go. You may have a young person like that. Some of them have no idea, and that's fine too, and that might be your young person. And parents always ask me, how do I approach those conversations at this juncture that we feel is really important? And you want to balance that with, it is important, but you don't have to have all the answers right now. And the 2 key things I find myself consistently talking to people in this Year 10 phase about is what is it that you like to do and what is it that you're good at. And if you can frame some conversations with your young person in that way, you'll find they're pretty happy to talk to you about what it is they like and what it is they're good at. And you would know, as we move into workforces and workplaces, we're all happier people if we're doing what we like and doing what we're good at. So 5 minutes in the place, I'm giving you advice already, but I find that really does help for a frame. I hope that's useful to you. Please enjoy the evening. There will be lots of information. It will be a little bit information overload, but it's all important, and it is about connecting with this wonderful team that you have to support you. So thank you for coming along, and please make contact with the school as and when you need to. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Sally. And look, I think Sally really provides some insights. I know most of you know me. As you know, and for some of you who've been families with me for a long time, I've been head of senior schooling as well, and I definitely concur with everything that Sally's saying, is that do what you love and what you're passionate about. There will be mantras that people talk about, and you'll hear little subtle whisperings over time around ATAR scores and scaling and all this kind of stuff. Put that to the back of your mind. Because ultimately you just want to do what you love, what you're passionate about, and they will be the things that you will succeed at. And that's probably the key mantra, that if you take away anything tonight, that's the one thing. Because we know, and there are some Year 10s here tonight, which is great, we've been talking to students this year about this rite of passage that we are now in. And Year 10 seems like a bit of a dubious little phase where they're not one thing nor the other, but we certainly are in our secondary phase of schooling, and we've been talking to students about this stepping up. And Year 10 is definitely the space that we're doing that. There's a lot of people playing in a lot of spaces. We're seeing a lot of subject changes at the moment, which is sort of great because we've chosen some things that haven't quite aligned, and now we're choosing things that probably suit students a little better. So, so why do we do set planning? And I think that the critical piece here is that we know our pathways. Students in applied positive psychology have been working alongside their teachers over the last term 2 about what it is they're thinking about. And I know at home you might have been having those conversations, you might not have. Oh, and one thing that I can tell you all, I know you're taking lots of photos, we are recording tonight as well, so if you need to pop back, we will pop that up somewhere if you need it, if that helps. So discuss those schooling pathways or post-schooling pathways, really important. And as Sally said, you may not know. I certainly didn't, and that's okay. But also it's about doing things like our My Future surveys and things like that, where you might get an idea of fields that you're strong in and that you're comfortable with, and that just gives you an area to sort of target your strategy. It's also about ensuring that your young person has all of the needs to, I suppose, complete and enter their schooling pathway. So when we're looking at finishing Year 12, some students aren't. Some students are looking at finishing in grade 10. Okay, some students are looking at doing trade pathways. There's a variety of things that we can consider, and so every student needs to complete a set plan. That is a requirement. Over the next 3 years, what we will do is we will review that at certain junctures, and that generally happens in consultation with the guidance officer. Because sometimes things change, as we know, and more often than not, young people and in an adult life, we would have normally stayed in our career pathways pretty much 1 or 2 changes throughout our career pathway, if that. Young people, the statistics are through the roof, they will change quite regularly. So it's about having that flexibility too. Set plans require students to really make decisions about career pathways. That doesn't mean that that's locked and loaded. Okay, that's really important to note too. But it's a good gauge for us all to be in the same playing field about what we are thinking they're doing. And so this is where we're having that open, transparent process where we're having meetings with you and your young person around what it is they're thinking about. And this really needs to be driven by them. I know we really want to help them, and that's probably the critical thing, but it's really about how they can drive the conversation, what they're thinking about, and how we can all support them on that journey. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. And during this process, obviously, everyone needs to be involved. Basically tonight, we will have a variety of presenters, and they will speak about the set planning process, timelines, dates, expectations, all of those things. But as Josh mentioned, there will be opportunities to ask questions, and there will be certainly opportunities to revisit. So if at the end of all of this you go, not sure, there's always opportunities to make appointments with the team, clarify questions, all of that kind of thing. But ideally what we do want is that confirmed plan at the end. And most students have a draft plan, I would say, in place at the moment. So it's about moving forward with that. So I'll just, the one slide I do want to show. So set P, if you hear us talk about set plan or set P, it's about senior education and training plan. Okay, that's really what it is. Every young person in Queensland is required to have that, and they need to complete one. So we do that through the One School process. For those of you who've been here for a period of time, we do that through that subject selection portal. You know, that's a bit crazy sometimes. That's where you access your timetables, all of those things. You can actually access that at home with your young person now and see what they've currently put in place. So that might be a conversation that you might like to start having. But really, it's about those decisions, and it's about probably thinking big and thinking beyond here. But as I said, And as Sally said, nothing is signed and sealed. You haven't, made a decision for life. Everything is very flexible, as we know we need to be. So we really are hoping that over the next sort of term or two, that we are working in partnership with you to help formulate these plans. We look forward to the parent evening, the parent set plan interviews that are coming up later in the term. And as I said, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask Josh or I or any member of the team. We're more than willing to help. Thanks very much.
Good evening, everyone. So my name's Carolyn, so I actually look after the year 7s and 12s, but part of my portfolio is the performance and pathways. So obviously set planning for our young children in year 10 is a pretty important pathway chat, so I'm quite heavily involved with the team around this process. I also come from a head of senior schooling background, so I've been through this process quite a number of times, and it's really important, I can't stress enough, and I want to thank you for coming tonight, and for those that are going to be watching afterwards as well, because it's really important to have you with us. So thank you for taking the time and investing in your young child as well, because it's very exciting. Alright, so I'm going to be touching on a couple of topics, mainly about types of subjects that we offer, and then talking about QCE as a whole, and QCIA, and then delving a little bit into one of the options that students can choose as an ATAR pathway. So, types of subjects. We've kind of got three main subjects. We've got general subjects, which are quite academic. They're leading towards a university pathway. They're a little bit more academic, a little bit more rigorous in the content and the assessment that they have. We have applied subjects, which are a little bit more practical, a little bit less demanding in the content and assessment, and obviously our VET certificates that we do offer here or externally as well that students can participate. So there are three types of subjects that students can be involved in. Okay, so general, applied, and VET, so vocational education and training. Now, in terms of assessment for these subjects, so general subjects have this is for year 12, sorry, when they get into unit 3 and 4, year 12. So they'll have 3 internal assessments and then 1 external assessment. So the 3 internal is written by us, marked by us, but then it gets confirmed as a QCAA, and then 1 external exam. So QCAA write the exam, minister, and they mark it. So for most subjects, that external exam is worth 25%. However, for your science and your mathematics subjects, the external exam is worth 50% that they do at the end of year 12. So usually around week 4, 5, 6, 7 of term 4 is when those external exams happen. For the applied subjects, so still sitting 4 assessments in year 12. So they'll do 4 internal assessments. However, for essential English and essential maths, that one of their 4 internal assessments is what we call a common internal assessment. So or a CIA, not the CIA in the US, but a common internal assessment. So what that is, QCAA write that exam. However, we administer it here at the school and we mark that. So a little bit different to the external where there's external markers, where the ones marking those. Now, jumping into QC and ATAR, I just want to talk a little bit about these because some people get them confused a little bit about what they are and what they're going and trying to achieve. Now, a QCE or a QCIA will have a small number of students going for a QCIA, but we want everyone to achieve this. So at the end of year 12, we want every single one of our students to leave with a QCE or a QCIA. That's the goal. Because what that is, that's the Queensland Certificate of Education. Alright? Saying that you've met the standards, and I'll talk about around that process in a moment. And then ATAR is obviously for those students looking to go towards a university pathway. So QC for everyone, and then ATAR is a little bit different. There is sometimes a little bit of confusion around that, and also there's alternative pathways, not just ATAR, that we'll talk to you a little bit later as well. Alright, so QC, as I said, stands for Queensland Certificate of Education. That's a bit of an example of what it might look like that you get at the end of your senior schooling. So obviously internationally recognised, and it's just a statement about evidence of that the students achieved across their senior schooling years. So some students, depending on their courses that they can do, you can start gaining QCE points from year 10, depending on the certificate courses or subjects that you're involved in. Sometimes some students bank them early from certificate courses and vocational education and training. What I do love about the QCE is that there is a wide range of learning options. Alright, because the goal is for everyone to be able to achieve this by the end of year 12, we want to make sure that students have different needs, they have different interests, they want to do different types of subjects. So that's why this is quite flexible. Students can pick their pathways and still lead with the QCE. Okay? It's a little bit different and they might have different outcomes and goals by the end of that. So how does it work? So there's 4 criteria that you need to meet to be able to achieve your QCE. So first one is you need a set amount of points, that's 20. You need to follow a set pattern, that's around the types of points that you make up the 20. You need to meet the set standard, and you also need to have literacy and numeracy. So they're the 4 categories. I'll dive into it a little bit. So first one, set amount. So as I said, this one's probably the straightforward, and a lot of people think about this as the only way to get a QCE. Sometimes you might have 20 QCE points, but you haven't met the other requirements. So that's only one part of a QCE, alright, achieving 20 QCE points more. So you can get them from applied, the general, the short courses, all those different types of areas, vocational education training certificates. So all these courses, and this is what I mean about it being flexible, these all contribute to your QCE and those 20 points. Alright, set pattern, this is probably the one that's probably the most confusing. Now, so what I mean by that, so 12 credits out of your 20 must come from what we call completed core. Now there's core subjects, but what we're talking about is completed core. So what that means is subjects that you have done from the start to the end, all the way through. So what this actually does, it kind of sometimes restricts how many subject changes that you can make along the way. There is obviously still flexibility, but it is a category that we need to be mindful of along the way when we're helping our students guide their pathways around, okay, let's try and make some good decisions early so we're not having to change too many subjects along the way, and we can tick this box about completed core. So again, what that means is if you're in English, alright, from start of year 11, hopefully you're in English by the end of year 12 all the way through, you're in it all the way through, and you're passing, that counts as completed core. You've been in the subject, you've completed it. Same with the certificate course, anything certificate 2, 3, 4, anything higher, alright, and you finish that certificate course, that counts as a completed core. Alright, so there's some other examples around some other subjects, so your general subjects, your applied, so all those can account towards completed core. Still in set pattern, you can have a maximum of 8 points for what we call complementary courses. So there's not too many of these that students partake in. Probably the most common one that we would have is university subjects. So some students in year 11 or 12, they might partake in the QT Start program, for example, where they're going to doing a university subject during high school. So that actually falls into a complementary category, and that doesn't count towards those 12 completed core. Still gets some points towards that 20, it's still an amazing opportunity, just falls into a different category. Now, set standard, fairly easy one, pass the subject. Alright, that's how you get the points. Alright, so as long as you're meeting the minimum set standard of that certificate course, that subject, you'll get the points. Alright, that one's that simple, nice and easy one. And then the last category that you need to meet is literacy and numeracy. So you must pass at least 1 unit of English and 1 unit of mathematics for them to tick that literacy and numeracy too. Just 1 unit along the way. So that could be from essential maths, it could be from specialist maths, it could be from literature, it could be from essential English. It does not matter what type of English or maths subject, as long as you're passing 1 unit to meet those literacy and numeracy needs. Okay? So that was QCE, wrapped up in a bit of a nutshell. Alright, so obviously a little bit more complex than that when we get into the working along the way. But just talk about ATAR very briefly. So Again, when I talk ATAR, this is about students who are looking to go and do further study after school, to get into their university. Obviously, we've gone through a few years of this now. It used to be the old OP system. I went through the OP system, but the new ATAR. So, for someone to be ATAR eligible, you need to have at least 5 general subjects. Could be doing 6, but only 5 are going to count. Or 4 general subjects plus 1 applied or a Cert 2 and higher. Cert 3, sorry. So what that means, we do encourage, if you're a student that is needing quite a higher ATAR, to be going down that 5 general subjects pathway. We've seen in the past that the 4 general plus 1 applied or 1 certificate course, sometimes we don't see as high ATARs with that. So we'll be recommending, if you're looking at a student that wants to go be a physio, be a doctor, those really, really high ATARs, we're definitely recommending those 5 or 6 general subjects as part of your course. Obviously, to get an ATAR, you must pass Unit 3 and Unit 4 English. Again, it actually doesn't matter what English. It can be essential English, it can be general, it can be literature. Doesn't matter what English, you just need to pass Year 12 English to be eligible for an ATAR. Okay? It may not count as one of your top 5 subjects, but you still need to pass that. Right, very quickly of how it calculates. Probably need to worry about this probably a little bit later on, but very briefly. So what happens? Year 12, we take all their results from all their subjects, we give them to QCAA. Alright, so they're the body that looks after us and all the students' assessment. We provide the raw results, the QCAA then provide that to QTAC. So QTAC are the actual people who create the ATAR, not the school, not QCAA, that actually sits with QTAC. Alright, so then they do their inter-subject scale. Alright, we'll talk a little bit about that, not in great detail. Alright, so they do their scaling, then they look at the students' top 5 scaled subjects. Alright, they add that all up, and then they put all thousands and thousands of students in order across the state, and then they start to allocate that ATARs from 99.95, alright, right down, so on a 2,000 point scale. So a little bit more points than the old 1 to 25 for OP, a little bit different in the new system. And then that's when those students receive your ATAR. I want to talk about this briefly. It was mentioned before, scaling. Sometimes we put loads and loads and loads of emphasis on scaling. We have no control over it. Alright, again, that's controlled by QTAC who do the scaling. Alright, all that we can do, and our students can do, is provide the best raw score results. They just need to do the best that they can in the classroom. That's what they can control. Fortunately, we can't control the scaling. Alright, but we do know some subjects scale differently to others. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about that and how that actually works. If you want to know more, when we do send out this PowerPoint and this link that becomes available, there are links throughout, so you might want to click and dive a little bit deeper into that to understand that. Or again, you can ask them some questions. But again, there's thousands of combinations of subjects. We want your student to do subjects that they're good at. That's the main thing. And that they're going to enjoy. So just very briefly, just some graphics about how it works. Alright, they do this on a large scale. This is a very basic example if you can see it. Alright, so you might have the orange subject on the side there. That's one subject, and then the blue one on the right. They then have to try and compare apples and oranges of all the different subjects and go, an 82 in this subject in general maths is worth an 85 in this subject, and they have to make all those comparisons along the way. So again, they do that across the whole state and use all of Queensland students' data to do that. Again, just want to re-emphasise that we're unable to have any control over that. But if you do have any questions about that at the end, if you want to know a little bit more, feel free to ask me, hang around. But that's my time. So again, QCE, everyone going for. ATAR is just one pathway, and Ms. Ackland now, who's going to hand over, is talking about a few other pathways. So thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Natasha, head of senior schooling at the moment, so I'm with your conversations with year 10s, because it's a chance not just to think about paid work, which is often the first thing that comes up. I don't know what I want to do, but actually to think about that harmony between our work, our life, and our learning, and what we want to continue learning. And that's a conversation that I really like to have with our year 10s during this time. This evening, I just wanted to give a brief overview of another subject or type of learning that students can do as part of the blended model in year 11 and 12, and that is our vocational space, okay, or our VET pathway, vocational education and training. So in conjunction with their applied or general subjects, students have the opportunity to complete a school-based apprenticeship or traineeship. They have the opportunity to potentially go to TAFE, and I know that many students have already expressed interest in that and perhaps even signed up. And also do certificate courses at here at the Gap State High School, which is another really fantastic opportunity. So first opportunity that we have is a school-based apprenticeship or traineeship. So this is where students have the opportunity to do both paid work as well as continue studying their certificate course at the same time. So basically they will find an employer, and that employer has to agree to provide a certain amount of work in a 12-month period for the student. At the same time, they will do a certificate course with either TAFE or another RTO, and be starting to work towards their apprenticeship. Okay, so for a student to do school-based apprenticeship, they have to have the support of their parent, first and foremost, the school, the employer, and they also have to then sign a contract with everyone agreeing to that with the Australian Apprenticeship Support Network. So lots of acronyms, but if you want more details, senior schooling is the place to call for that. If students are going to do something like this, all right, it is a big undertaking. They might be away from school for a day a week, all right, and to help support that, we offer a study line for students that are involved. Okay, so they can drop one subject so that they've got a little bit of extra time to support them through that process. In terms of benefits, and this is not just for students going down the applied pathway, but also for that blended model, maybe doing general subjects, but really have a keen interest in another area. They get the opportunity to work towards a nationally recognised certificate. They can get hands-on experience. They get that harmony, that blend between learning something they're interested in and a job, learning the latest knowledge and skills, and it can also be a pathway to further tertiary studies. Okay, so there's multiple pathways into university. It doesn't have to be through doing general subjects and that ATAR pathway. All right. Finding a school-based apprenticeship, sometimes it can be tricky. We email out lots of opportunities, and we also have a school notice board where we post things through our community networks, and we are constantly looking to build on those and provide as many opportunities for students as possible. It's also possible for you to find your own, in which case we will then support that process to take place. Okay, so if someone's interested, first point of call, they can knock on the lower Q block door at senior schooling, and we'll do everything we can to support that. All right, so school-based apprenticeship is one option. Another is to complete a certificate course at TAFE, or at school, or through another registered training organisation. Okay, so this could be a certificate 1 all the way up to a diploma, and you can earn up to 8 QCE credits with that. So if you think about working towards 20 points, or even contributing to part of that core learning, this is a really valuable thing to consider. All It can also lead to that articulation into university or into a diploma as well. And we've got lots of courses on offer here at the Gap State High School, which means that you don't have to actually go out on site, and the impact on your learning isn't there where you're out for a full day. So the courses that we offer are listed there. So we've got the Cert 1 in construction, the Cert 2 and 3 in hospitality, we've got the certificate in fitness, as well as the Cert 3 in business. Right, so they're the ones that we offer on credit here. If there's not something that students are interested in, they can also do this through another RTO, such as the Brisbane Northwest Trade Training Centre over in Mitchelton. I won't read through all of the certificates there on scope, that's constantly changing and evolving. But we have a really close relationship with them, and they provide lots of courses that we can't offer here. Okay, so there are lots of different options in this space. They do change constantly, and if you do have questions about that or want to sort of see what's on offer in, for 2023, senior schooling is your first point of call. Right, I've also got the link just down the bottom there to the Brisbane Northwest Trade Training Centre for more information about their courses at the moment. Now, if we are considering vocational education as a pathway, there's also the financial considerations. So, in terms of funding, there is subsidised funding from the government for students to pursue this. So, lots of acronyms. The first one is simply VET in schools. Right, we refer to this locally as VETs, and what that means is that students can have full funding for a certificate too. They only get their VETs funding once, so we can't chop and change and think that it's all going to be free. Right, it's really important to consider where you would like that VETs funding to go. If a student does withdraw early enough, there is some scope to get back some of the cost, or if it's early enough, we can apply it somewhere else. But it is really important to realise that you only get that VETs funding once. There's also user choice or user pay funding, where you contribute towards the cost of a course, and that comes into place if a student would want to do a second certificate course. So use their VETs funding, say, for a certificate 2 in hospitality, then they also really want to do a certificate 1 in construction. All right, so you would have to contribute the cost to the second certificate course. And then important to note that there is also the Cert 3 guarantee. So once a student finishes year 12, they get access to further subsidised training. Okay, so fully funded once they finish year 12. So if you are sort of going down that vocational pathway, wanting to try some courses, different funding available through that. I just put an example there too. So if a student was wanting to do the certificate 2 in hospitality, for example, if it was the only course they're doing, obviously that would have no cost under the VETs funding. Would cost about $1,000 when it comes to the user pay funding model. So we can give that these are just approximate figures, and depending on the course, depending on where the student is doing the course, that will change. That's something to keep in mind. All right, on to the fun stuff. Subject selection. So this is the fun bit, having a think about what you want your year 11 and 12 day-to-day to look like, what subjects we want to learn more about, and where that consideration about what we enjoy should be at the forefront of our mind. All right, so subject selection. Students are going to have to choose 6 subjects. That includes any VET courses that you would like to do. Okay, so at this point, we are asking you to have a conversation about 6 courses that you are interested in and would really love to study in year 11 and 12. We need to balance the career pathway, right? Things we're good at, things that we enjoy. And we also just need to think about the future in terms of if we're looking at university, do we have prerequisites that we need to fill? So having a look at those courses if you already have them in mind. You don't have to have them in mind, in which case we can think about building a really solid base to leave our options open. Thinking about the type of learner you are is important when it comes to those external exams. They're not that scary, but they are 50% for your maths and sciences and 25% for your other general subjects. So just thinking about that as part of the consideration. And all of our subjects are listed in the Senior Curriculum Guide for 2023. So you won't be able to read this. I just took a snapshot from the contents page. I did email it out earlier this week, also available on the website. But you can see that we've got, under the different faculty areas, a variety of different subjects. Those subjects will have some prerequisites. Okay, so those are included, again, in the curriculum guide, and it's really important to reflect on that achievement. What am I good at? How am I tracking? If we're not achieving a particular result in English, if we're not getting that B in English, perhaps literature is not going to be the subject for us. All right, we might be looking at a general English or an essential English. Okay, so there are subject prerequisites, and that's something that you need to take into consideration as you make that selection as well. All right. So the process, subject selection. Once we've spent the next few weeks looking at that curriculum guide, looking at the subject prerequisites, having a think about what we love and what we'd like to study in year 11 and 12, we can then make those choices. So I am going to be, so in the student portal that was spoken about earlier, students will be able to list those 6 subjects, starting with their English and their maths, all right, along with their 4 other choices. Okay, so 6 subjects in total. We're also asking students to select 2 reserves so that we can take that into consideration when timetables are constructed. All right, it's not always going to be possible that you get your first 6 choices, but we obviously do our very best to accommodate that. Okay, so in the next couple of weeks, we are thinking about our 6 choices along with 2 reserve subjects. As you know from some of the communication that's gone out already, we then have to conduct the set planning interviews. All right, this is an awesome opportunity for us all to get together. It doesn't happen as often as it should, and we are going to have a half-hour interview to talk about that pathway. So on the 11th and 12th of August, which is just following the ECHA public holiday in week 5, students will only be required to attend during that time during their interview, and we've got sessions happening across the Thursday and the Friday. Okay, so I hope that having a look at those times, so from 7 till 12:30 will be session 1 on the Thursday and the Friday, as well as 1:30 to 6:30 on the Thursday, a little bit earlier on the Friday. I hope there's a time there that works for you, and if there's not, we will certainly do our best to accommodate that. Okay, so the 30-minute interview will take place down at Lower Q, down at senior schooling, and that will be an opportunity for us to have that discussion about the career pathway. So where you want to go in the future, what you're enjoying, what's going well for you. A lot of this work has happened in applied positive psychology already, but it's a chance for the interviewer to have that conversation as well. We will discuss the 6 subjects that you've selected, making sure the prerequisites have been met, and also talk about the subject load. So managing the homework requirements, the subject load overall. Are you going to be able to manage that? All right, have you got a balance there when it comes to those subjects that you've selected? You will also, as part of that interview, have to sign the senior student agreement to, I guess, acknowledge and agree to the those are the things that will happen as part of that set planning interview across the half hour. Last, so in terms of booking, some of the logistics, the really exciting things. So this will happen in a similar fashion to the parent-teacher interviews. I'm going to open bookings on Friday the 22nd, so this Friday at 9 a.m. And following the presentation tonight, you know that we'll be emailing this out and we'll include the details for booking an interview on Friday. When you open up the emails with your details in, it won't have specific names for interviewers. You just need to focus on the time slot that's suitable for you. So it will just come up with interviewer 1 to 10, right? And you'll just be selecting a time that is suitable. Okay. Going forward, so we've got a few weeks here to have these discussions. So bookings will open on Friday and they will close on Monday the 1st of August. Throughout week 3 and 4, the subject selection will open for students for them to input this in the student portal. Alright, and they will have support at school. So they can, there will be one lesson in applied positive psychology where their teacher's guiding them through that. They'll obviously be talking to you, they can access it at home, and I'm also happy for them to drop into senior schooling with any questions that they may have. There is also the opportunity at the set planning interview, right, to ask any final questions and to make sure that those 6 subjects are going to be suitable. So when students are deciding before that interview, there is still room to change. They don't have to have it all sorted before they get there, because that is the purpose of the interview. Okay, so please keep that in mind and be ready to ask any questions if you still have them, if you're still deciding between a couple of subjects. The interviews are up there Thursday the 11th and Friday the 12th of August, and then obviously going into term 4 we'll do our best to accommodate all of those choices, and you'll get more information about your subjects. Okay, so that's the process for the next 3 weeks or so. In terms of key dates, starting by this Friday, trying to get that interview time slot that works for you, and to really support our young people to transition into their senior phase of learning. Alright, I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who is our guidance officer at Untitled High School.
Toohey. I'm one of the guidance officers here at the GAT. I work with years 7, 9 and 11. Some of you may have met Carla Sampaio. She's the year 10 guidance officer, and she will be the one that most likely supports your young people through this process. So in regard to this pathway support, as guidance officers, we work with students, we speak with students, about their post-school and career options. And we try and help them to formulate some form of direction about their after-school direction, by providing information that's best suited to their strengths. So as many of the speakers tonight have mentioned, it's really important that we focus on their students' strengths and their interests, because that's where we generally see the most amount of success. So for many of our students, they are unsure about what they want to do. So providing information about universities, TAFE, apprenticeships, traineeships, work, and how to get to these points is a critical part of those conversations that we have. In terms of accessing our support, you can make an appointment, students can make an appointment online via the Student Hub that they have access to through their laptops. They can also drop down to Lower E Block and make an appointment with one of the teacher aid staff there. And parents can make an appointment via phone or email at the guidance at the GAP State High School email address, or through the parent referral form that we're getting up online on the website. So wellbeing is a really important aspect for all of us in reaching our potential, particularly young people. So we try and promote positive wellbeing in our interactions with students through providing strategies for managing stress, as sometimes that senior phase can become quite stressful, navigating social relationships and interactions with others in their lives, understanding how they can give back to the community either through school, work or extracurricular activities. And we're happy to sort of work with the student around whatever their needs might be and how we can best support them. In terms of future planning, we like to support students in knowing how to access help and who is the best person to ask. And that might be around career, it might be around post-school options, it might be around just general health and well-being or mental health as well. So we're able to support students in that process and ensuring that they take time for self-care in their lives. Because it's really important that our young people are very busy. A lot of them have part-time jobs and lots of their after-school activities. So it's really important that we promote self-care, and I think as parents that's really vital as well. And that could be anything depending on the young person, but exercise, reading, socialising with peers, mindfulness, or any other opportunity that a young person might have to sort of take the time for themselves and encourage their own well-being. Also helping them to plan for the future and understanding that it's okay not to be sure at this point in time. At this year, senior phase is a really good opportunity for students to understand, to focus on their interests and have a taste of that and try and succeed in those areas. And it's okay to not be sure about that direction because generally that comes when we understand what their strengths are. So please feel free to reach out to myself or Carla if you have any questions or if you feel like your young person's needing support in any way. So use those referral options or just give us a ring. We're more than